Hello and welcome to the Roundtable Podcast. I am Shogun. Joining me today is the legendary Greydon Square. He is the leader of the Greydon Collective, Greydon Square Collective, intellectual, hip-hop, abstract rap music of a very high quality. We talked to his friend Sci-Fi yesterday. We're going to talk to Greydon today about his past work, his upcoming work, and other topics of interest. But before we do, make sure you join the Roundtable Discord server and join us on our YouTube and our BitChute channels, where you can find over 250 episodes of the Roundtable Discord podcast. So that being said, thank you for joining me, Greydon Square. It's an honor to have you on the server. Techno Shaman introduced you to us. He showed us your music. I'm a huge fan. It is excellent and of a high quality. Anyone who hasn't heard it can find it on YouTube and other places as well. Check out our announcements channel for links to those songs. But welcome, Greydon. How are you, my friend?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm pretty good. I'm honored, privileged to be hosted on you guys' podcast and everything, and to be on the server. Also proud to represent Grand Unified everywhere I go. So, I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. We're really happy to have you. The style of music you do is what I grew up on and what I love. And listening to you sounded really familiar to the point where I thought, did I already listen to this guy? Or is he, not that you're similar to anybody, but so let me ask you, how many years have you been doing it? Like, when did you start spitting rhymes? And also we asked Sci-Fi, like, what was the origin story, right? Like, how did you get into it?
Interesting. So, first, shout out to Sci-Fi and Low Technology, which is a smaller collective within the Grand Unified Greater Collective. But my origin story comes out of being a product of the system. I was an orphan growing up. I was born into the Department of Children and Family Services system, California. And I grew up as a ward of the court. I grew up in group homes. I grew up in foster care, juvenile hall, and camps. And so I was around a lot of kids who had already rapped. And when I remember I was living in Compton when I was growing up, and I was in a group home this was around the time, what Bone Thugs album was that? It was like Art of War. It was like 95 when Art of War came out, around 95. And I was about 16 years old or something like that. And that was my first exposure to like kids my age rapping and trying to write rhymes and stuff. So you fast forward a little bit, I've already started getting in trouble. And I was in this situation where I was in this placement, and it was called McLaren Hall. And it was very much segregated, not only by race, but by gang. And so you had white gangs, Latino gangs, black gangs on the Blood and the Crip side. And so I was running heavy with, my people. And what had happened was there was a race riot that kicked off, a race fight between the Crips and the whites. So I got involved in this huge thing, got into a big fight. All the staff came in, was throwing everybody around and, pepper spraying people. The cops had came because this wasn't like an actual probation facility, and took a few people to jail and that stuff. Well, I was a part of that initial group. And when I was sitting and holding, waiting to be booked for assault and all that type of stuff, they gave me a little pad, a little white pad, and a little pencil, like those little tiny pencils that you would get. Just take out the little pencil. And it was a day before my 18th birthday. And that was the day I wrote my first rhymes, like actual put pencil to paper and wrote rhymes. And so that first little bit of time that I was locked up, that was me and this kid named Warlock. We wrote rhymes together. And when he left and, I got a new partner, if you will, like somebody I was hanging with, then we would write rhymes. So this all took place up until I went to the military, got out of juvie and, tried to figure what my life out was going to be. And I ended up going to the military. And then in the military was where I kind of forged my battle technique, if you will, my ability to really go hard in the paint, confront the tough creative task head on. And it didn't matter if you were trying to battle or you just put me on the spot to rhyme. I just was about that life at the time. So in my early 20s, when I was in the military, I would go around from, unit to unit on post, me and the homie 3 Grand, and we would just battle people. We didn't, he was ill. He was from South Carolina and I was from LA, and I was just learning really how to control rhyme in that way. And on post, I met a few people who rapped as well. We had a little music collective on post, and I learned how to kind of engineer other people and deal with other people. And then when I got out of the military, say a couple of tours in Iraq later, I decided to go to school. And I wanted to go to school for sound engineering. So I was looking at Winter Park, Florida. I was looking at LA School of Recording Art, or whatever that school was, LA Music School of Recording, or whatever that was. And there was a place in Phoenix, Arizona, called the Conservatory of Recording Arts and Sciences. So me and one of my battle buddies from the military, we ended up moving from Kansas City, where when I got out, I moved there to start working at a casino. So I moved back out west. And when I came out here, I was still writing pretty heavy, but nothing about the stuff that I talk about. I was getting decent at writing and decent at recording. I was learning better recording techniques, better mixing techniques. My content had really changed. Up until this point, my name was Apocalypse, and everything that I talked about was highly negative and aggressive, right? Combative, if you will. And a lot of that was just to mask the pain that I had experienced growing up, the trauma that I experienced growing up in the system. So around the time I was about 25-ish, I met a girl. And this girl was a girl at the music school, the conservatory. And, we hit it off and whatnot. And we used to have these crazy long discussions about everything, but a lot of them would center about religion. But it basically started off with us having these conversations about religion because she had asked me a question about the legacy of slavery in America. Or I'd asked her about a question about the legacy of slavery in America. I had said she was a devout Christian. And while I was a theist, I definitely wasn't a fundamentalist Christian. I just was very open with what I had considered to be truth and, the nature of the universe and whatnot. And we used to have these crazy long discussions. One of the discussions and one of the questions I'd asked her was, had African Americans not been a product of the transatlantic slave trade, would we believe in the Judeo-Christian belief system now? And it basically created this huge rift between us because it was something we always came back to. So I finally wrote this rhyme called Extion, right? And it was a direct response to some of the things that she would tell me about. Now, just, full disclosure, she has passed away. It happened a long time ago. It didn't happen anytime recent, but it's still a sensitive subject for me to talk about because we were at odds when she had passed away. And so there's always this bit of unfinished kind of, or guilt that comes with the fact that I took shots at her, on this record, on my first record, on some of these songs that I wrote. And, we were not on the best of terms when she had passed away. But basically, I wrote this song called Extion. And in this song, I was talking about why I was no longer identifying as a Christian, from a Black perspective, from a humanist perspective, from secular, logical perspective, just a bunch of different ways that I kind of took on this particular topic of Black religiosity. So I didn't really think much of it. I wrote the song, she heard it, we talked about it or whatnot, and it just was a song that sat there. So a little bit later in that year, I was on this music site called, what was it? I can't remember what it was called, but it was not SoundCloud, but SoundClick. And it was basically a website where you could, it's like SoundCloud basically, it was like the first SoundCloud. You could post your stuff, have a little profile and whatnot. So I'd post some of this old music that I had recorded from the military there. And my SoundClick account might still be up there as Apocalypse, which is hilarious. So if you go there, you would find all these old songs about the military and me being deployed and growing up in group homes and all this type of stuff. And YouTube started to become a thing around this time. So I jumped on YouTube, and at this time, I was reading more about religion. I was, versing myself in Christianity and Islam in a way that I hadn't done before. So I had a lot of thoughts about it at this point. And so me and one of my battle buddy I moved out here with, we recorded a video, and it was called Atheist Nation. And it was me and him talking about like religion, and how in the country we had come across people who we had negative experiences with when it came to religion, and talking about it. And we highlighted some of the contradictions that we had thought, and all these different types of things. So I put out this video, and about a week later, it's tracking real well. And somebody had asked me, it wasn't crazy, but it was like 10, 15,000 views. And somebody in the comment section had asked me, he was like, are you the same Apocalypse? Are you the same Apocalypse who wrote, or who from SoundClick or whatever? And I was like, yeah, that's me. So I was growing up in this group home in Pasadena, California. It was, I don't know, it was probably like 94, 93. I don't think I had even moved to Compton yet, because I moved to Compton when I was 12, maybe 13ish. So I'm in this group home, and there was an unspoken rule that if you wanted to watch something on TV, you better be willing to fight for it, and you better win. Otherwise, you're watching whoever just whooped your ass, whatever they want to watch. So obviously, I was into completely different things. Two of the older boys had rotated in what they had watched between sports and martial arts. So I had ended up becoming a fan of martial arts. I remember Kung Fu: The Legend Continues was like a big thing at the time. And then the other guy was a fan of sports, so basketball and football and all these different things he was really into, and so we had to watch that. But there was another kid named Eddie V, and he was really into sci-fi and Star Trek and stuff like that. So I remember one time I didn't want to watch that. So of course, at this time, and not a stranger to fighting, I challenged him. We go outside, I lose, I come back inside, I sit down. And I'm upset because, I'm in a situation where now I got to watch something. I already did as much as I could to avoid watching it, unless I want to go outside and do something else, which I obviously didn't want to do. I got to watch whatever is going to be shown. And so he comes back, he's happy, he's giddy. And it was, if I remember correctly, it was the season 4 conclusion of the season 3 cliffhanger of the Next Generation Best of Both Worlds, where the Borg took over. They took Captain Picard, made him look cutest. Riker has the ship. He's like fire at the end. You know what I mean? So I come into Star Trek basically there. And as a young kid from the LA area, you really, as a young black kid from the LA area, you really don't want to let people know that you're into like, nerd culture or geek stuff, especially at this time in the 90s. Being a nerd and a geek right now is mainstream, but that wasn't the case in the 90s. People took heat for liking stuff like, that was considered nerdy and geeky. There was no pop in that. There was no extra publicity you were going to get, or no leeway because, oh yeah, he's a nerd, he's a geek. Nah, you got pretty much shit on. So I come into Star Trek at that age and developed a love for the franchise, for the IP. And so I kept up with Star Trek. When Deep Space Nine came out, it became my favorite show of all time because it was my Star Trek, the first one I got a chance to watch from the beginning, because Deep Space Nine came out around the 6th season of The Next Generation. So I was living in Compton, and it was, 97 or, whatever it was, 96, 97. And now it's like I'm just getting introduced to gangs. I'm really, running the streets with people that I shouldn't be running the streets with. And all the while, I'm still watching Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, old, episodes of TOS. And so that's where my love and introduction to science fiction came from. There were some stories and things I was interested in too, like Back to the Future and Terminator, but it wasn't anything like it was when I discovered Star Trek. So that's where I started talking about physics and not specifically physics, but just higher ontologically ordered things, multiple dimensions and multiverses and mirror universes and all those different things. And then obviously when I became a physics major, then it became, okay, now I'm talking about stuff that I'm actually studying. But at that time, I think that was when some of the origins of some of those higher order things. I was also introduced to other science influences as well, Carl Sagan and, you know, just different people like that. So I think that had a big factor in what I was influenced by on that front.
This is amazing content, to be honest, but there's at least two more questions I have to ask, and after that, I'm going to ask two more questions, and we're going to open it up for the audience. So my first question is, I have to ask you about your military service. For multiple reasons, I have to ask about it. So just tell me about it. Like, what branch did you serve with? How long did you serve? Were you deployed? If you're comfortable talking about that.
Yeah, obviously I'm not going to go into crazy details about deployment, but people know I was deployed to Iraq, and you know, I was basically deployed from 2002 to the beginning of 2004. So mid 2002 to 2004. So it was almost 2 years. It wasn't exactly 2 years because I had transferred units and went to Germany for months in transition and got attached to another unit and all that different sort of stuff. So, but this had happened, you know, 5 months after 9/11. So when I had got out of juvie hall and all that sort of stuff, I was given an opportunity or a choice. It wasn't really a choice. My probation officer was just like, look, you're obviously not getting the message here. You're still messing up. So I'm going to give you a choice to either go to the California Conservation Corps or, you know, go to the military. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to the military. I'm not comfortable going to the military. I don't want anybody yelling at me, blah, blah. I thought I was this big tough guy, you know, from the streets, from LA and all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm not doing that. So I'll go to the Conservation Corps. So he's like, all right. So he gets me in the Conservation Corps, and it's in Northern California. So I got to fly 6 hours or whatever north, and it's a totally different climate, totally different culture, totally different gang culture. So I go up there, and within like 4 or 5 days, maybe 6 days, I'm already fighting with somebody over some gang shit. And I get kicked out. And so my probation officer's like, yeah, so that other choice wasn't really a choice. You're going to the military. I'm gonna basically violate your probation. So I was like, all right, well, it looks like I'm going to the military. So I kind of looked over my options, and you know, I had already been in enough trouble. So the Air Force wasn't going to take me. The Marines wasn't going to take me, and the Navy, I was too tall. I felt like if I was, now at this time I was 6'1.5", maybe 6'2", and I was like, okay, well, I'm getting up there in height. You know, I don't want to be on a ship where I'm bumping my head on everything and all this type of stuff. So, because I had heard all these stories about like David Robinson and how tall he was, and I was watching basketball at the time, and I thought I was going to be that tall. So, it was one of the factors why I didn't go to the Navy, because I thought I was too tall. But obviously, there are hella tall people in the Navy. I don't think it's that big of a deal. So anyway, I went to, and it was in 2001, and about 5 months later, I swear in May, June, July, August, September. Yeah, so 4.5 months later, 9/11 takes place. And I'm in Virginia at Fort Lee, Virginia, when it happens. So I'm like right on the coast, right, you know, everything's going down. I was coming from some detail off post. I can't remember what the detail was off post, but I was doing something I was a soldier detail off post, and we were stuck off post. And I remember when we got the news, I was in a liquor store where we were basically getting ready to go back on post, and people were crowded around the store counter. And they were watching something on TV, and I was looking, I came up to the counter with what I was going to buy. I was like, what are you guys watching? And they were like, watching? This is the news. This is happening for real. And I was like, wait, what? And I looked on the TV, and right around that time, you had seen like the first tower was on fire, and you know, it was just like, whoa, what's going on? So I hop back on in the van, and we all basically head to another place. And when we were at that place, we were all gathered around the TV, and this was maybe 15, 20 minutes later. And sure enough, we see the second plane hit, and you know, everything kind of hit the fan. We tried to leave there, get back on post. They wouldn't let anybody who was off post on post. They wouldn't let anybody who was on post off post. So it was a pretty chaotic scenario, and I'm at this time I'm 19, going on 20, I think, no, I had just either I just turned 19 or I just turned 20. Can't remember, but either way, I was very young, and so I was thinking in my mind, oh yeah, we're going to war. I'm going. I got shitty luck already. So, it's probably like I'm going to be on the front lines and something's going to happen to me and it's going to be all bad. So I'm already like, it's already going in my head. I'm pumping myself up. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody's talking about who it was. And because at this time we didn't know who it was and what it was, the situation, and all these things start coming out. By early 2002, there was already being people deployed over there. And I was a part of a unit, 82nd Airborne, that it went over there with 582nd Maintenance Battalion, and we were at a place called Altiquatum Air Base, and it was an air base that we had, I guess, bombed out during the first Gulf War. So we had convoyed from they called it Junction City, Kuwait, and we had convoyed, and big long trek, and bunch of crazy stuff had happened, and all of that stuff. But it was, I tell people this about being deployed all the time. Like, going to Iraq taught me the difference between society and nature. And a lot of people who get comfortable in society do so because they're so separated from nature. There was no fire department there. There was no police. There was, no plumbing. There was none of the first world conveniences that we took for granted. And I thought, even as a quote unquote tough guy who grew up in LA, that I knew what the harder side of life was. And clearly I didn't. So that directly impacted me. And so for all the experiences that I had with being in the military, one thing that stayed with me was the difference between society and nature, and what I saw what people will do when society is no longer there.
Very, very well answered, my friend. So the last question I want to ask you before we open it up to the audience is a twofold question. One, can you please tell me about your last project or your most recent musical project? And two, if you have something coming up, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, wow, the last project that I put out actually was Compton Scattering, which was, I have two lines of albums that I'm doing right now. By lines, I mean they're directly related. It's a series of albums. One is the Compton Legacy albums. The other one is the Cartage of Scale albums. And so the first album I had ever released was called The Compton Effect. It was a double entendre for a concept in particle physics. And then the next album I did was called the CPT Theorem, Cartage of Scale. And I got arrested then, me, for what I had done under their watch. And so I figured, well, I'm probably going to have to reinvent myself and talk about some different stuff, because they're probably not interested in hearing anything I have to say right now. So I started talking about the far future, and I started talking about what human how the human to break the flesh, and biology and all those different things. So that really came out of the rejection of the atheist community when I got into that thing in DC. People had really said in no uncertain terms, they're like, listen, we're not messing with you no more. So you're going to have to just find another way. And that was my other way.
Fantastic. So do you have an upcoming project?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't want to forget that. I'm glad you reminded me. So I do have albums coming up right now. I'm releasing an album very soon. I can't give it a date, but it's definitely this year. and months, not years, an album called City on the Type of Forever. It's the first in 4 parts of a 64 track project called Type 4. And the first 16 is basically 4 parts in 16. The first album that I'm doing is City on the Type of Forever. And that is almost finished. Right now, I'm working on one of my students' albums called A Death Away from Paradise. His name is EOC Pitus. And he's one of Sci-Fi's peers. So I had taken Sci-Fi on as a student, well past some of these stories I'm telling, right? Like I had already been known, already been, been around the world and seen things, and my music had already permeated. So when I took on the students of Sci-Fi, EOC Pitus, Kizzle was a part of that. It was basically because I was trying to learn how to teach hip hop in a more effective and efficient way. And so they were probably like my, I don't know, 8th or 9th students up at this point. And I had learned a lot of lessons about what not to do and how to teach and all that sort of stuff. So Pitus's album, A Death Away from Paradise, is the one that's coming out really, really soon. I'd say, next week it's coming out. And then Sci-Fi's album is coming out a few weeks after that. His album is called Realities Reassembled. I had executively produced his first album called Dimensions Disassembled. And I'm working on an Extropy and Entropy comic book. It's called Extropy and Entropy, and it's me and one of my best friends, Tombstone the Dead Man, and we're doing a comic book where we're telling a story about the Omniverse. So yeah, it's a lot of projects. There's also the Grand Unified Community that I try to build. Don't even get me started talking about Star Citizen, or I'll recruit half your server to play Star Citizen with me.
Please do, actually.
Don't. You don't want me to. I promise you don't want me to do this. We will hijack this entire podcast.
Dude, that's
okay.
Good. So
okay.
Listen, here's what I want to say for my last question. Anything
okay.
you want to pump up, anything you want to hype, anything you want to recruit for, videos you want us to check out, teams you want us to join, whatever, it'll get out to a couple hundred people at least. So anything,
well, the first thing I'll say is big shout out to the Grand Unified Creative Collective. I had created this idea of an intellectual community back in, 2008, 2007. I had come up with the idea of basically right after I came up with the idea of Greydon Square, changing my name to Greydon Square, I had come up with Grand Unified. I can't remember which I came up with first. It might actually predate the name Greydon Square. But basically I was, if you're talking about, well, I can't even remember what the hell I was talking about because I started talking about Star Citizen.
Well, two things, right? So first, tell us about anywhere people can find your music. They can subscribe to you. They can support you financially, or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
After so you can that, tell us about Star Citizen.
Okay. So GreydonSquare.com, GreydonSquare.net. You can find me. All my music is on everywhere you can find music, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp, Google Music, YouTube, anything like that. I got my publishing worked out, so I pretty much get paid anywhere my music gets played. And, for the most part, this is what I do for a living. I don't have any other jobs. I'm a full-time musician, and I'm appreciative of that. I don't take that for granted, but I do understand that it requires a fledgling community and people who really believe in what you do. So shout out to the Grand Unified Community, who's basically been cobbled together with some of the most intellectual, nerdy people you can think of, and I love that. But that's where you can find me: Instagram, Facebook. I'm also Greydon Square, Greydon, square like the shape. As far as Star Citizen, are we clear to talk about Star Citizen now?
Yeah, bro, go nuts.
Okay. So I feel like Star Citizen is the greatest game ever conceived. And I'm pretty sure people would consider me a white knight and tell me that I'm a complete fanboy who's not objective and biased in my assessment, which all of those things could be true. But as you guys know in this interview, I grew up on things like Star Trek and later things like Stargate and Battlestar and stuff like that. So for me, living out a space fantasy where I get to be a captain and, I have a crew and, I have all these department chiefs and chief of engineering and a chief of security and my exo and all these different things. So when there was an opportunity, a game that was pitched or it was thought up by a guy named Chris Roberts, who had already had some experience in the gaming community. He did a crowdfunding campaign in about 2012 for basically the greatest space sim ever. That was his pitch. And sure, he had all these things that he said every time we met a goal, they would put those things in there. And a lot of people were skeptical. But, I had a little money. And I was like, well, sure, I'll throw in on it. I mean, what could happen? What's the worst that could happen? It doesn't come out. Okay, whatever. I mean, I don't have it now, so I'm not really going to miss it. And, if this $100 contributes to them, or actually it was like $300 at the time. If this $300 contributes to them making the game or something like that, then fine, whatever. So I throw in my little $300 and I forget about it for at least 2 years. So 2014 comes around and finally they have a working version of the game, but it's not a whole game or anything. It's just a hangar bay where your ship is in there. You can walk around inside your ship, but you couldn't do anything. You couldn't fly. There was no space. There was no space stations. There was nothing. So, I checked in on the game. I didn't have a gaming PC at the time. A couple years later, they've got more progress. Now they have a flight simulator. Now they have different ships in the game. I check in. Okay, looking pretty good, but obviously not a finished product. Check out. A couple years later, check back in. And now they have a planetary system, and they've got multiple planets, and they're working on their atmosphere and their space to planet transition, where you can actually enter the atmosphere and go from space to the planet side. And so now I'm like, okay, I need to start putting a crew together. So I reached out to the homie, shout out Captain Cliff Douglas of the UFS Janet May. But I reached out to him and I was like, yo, have you seen this game yet? And he was like, nah, let me check it out. So he gets into it, and now me and him are like, reaching out to all of our friends, Tombstone and Blue Picasso and all these dudes who are Grand Unified mainstays, right? So now everybody in the community is excited. We're all pumped. When this game comes out, we get to live out all of our Star Trek fantasies and stuff. And so I built a computer for Star Citizen. I had not gotten into PC gaming before. For me, I was a console dude who played games like NBA 2K and NHL. I play a lot of hockey. I played Mortal Kombat and Battlefield 3 and Battlefield 4. Those were the games I played. I didn't play space sims or flight sims or anything like that. Maybe back in the day on some early PC gaming stuff, but it was never on the stuff that I do now with PC gaming. So once I started putting the crew together, the game became a little bit more fleshed out. And once multi-crew gameplay, well, at least what they claim is multi-crew gameplay now, was introduced into the game, we started getting into the game together, and we built a crew up of 50 people almost. And we would get into the verse together, and we'd train and we'd run simulations, and we'd work on our theory crafting about how the organization was built and what the ranking was and who was in charge of what things. And so when the game became more actualized, we could act on this theory crafting we had done. So now the game's in a state where they're about to expand out into multiple systems. There's just been this one star system with 4 planets, and each planet has 4 or 5 moons, and each moon has dozens of stop points, and you can explore anywhere on the moon, anywhere on the planet, anywhere in the solar system essentially can be explored. And so when I put the crew together of the Unified Federation, it was like, okay, this is going to be a Grand Unified Star Citizen group where we're actually recruiting from inside the Grand Unified space. I'm the only one who does any recruiting into the org, and I only recruit from inside the Grand Unified space. So it was easy to keep a certain energy, like a certain chemistry amongst the crew that you would see in something like Star Trek. People with positive energy and people with solution-based, perspectives, and people who wanted to work together and explore together. And so Star Citizen became our weekly get together. And for about 4.5 years now, if not going on 5, since 2015, we've been, it's been over 5. It's 2021, Jesus. So over 5 years now, we've been meeting every week as a crew. We get into the verse together. We play together. We train together. When we do great, I'm great on the crew and complimentary on the crew, and when we do bad, I chew the crew out. You know what I mean? Like it's a real kind of unique situation where a lot of people who maybe wanted to do something with someone that they maybe had admired creatively in some way, you know, I tell them, hey, you want to come through? If you PC game and whatnot, if you're into space and exploration and Star Trek and those sort of things, we have an organization that basically does that full time, and we'd love to see if you'd be interested in joining and whatnot. But it's just this open sandbox simulator that sci-fi nuts like myself and people like sci-fi, like when I told sci-fi about the game, it's like, bro, I'm in. This is my dream game. You know, this is literally the game that everybody who is into Star Wars and Battlestar and you know, all these the Mandalorian and stuff like that, they're into stuff like that. Uh so that's what we do as a collective, as a group. There's, you know, 50 some odd people that we play with for the most part every week, and um it's well organized crew. You know, we obviously have made some changes and there's been some bumps in the road, and we've had, you know, some issues in our scaling, but all in all, it's a really fine group of people who really just want to do something together in the name of Grand Unified, and to be able to have a unified Federation fleet that is an extension of Grand Unified into the Star Citizen universe. It's one of my dreams. It's awesome. I don't have any more fun being, you know, doing this. I can't even think of anything I have. Probably watching the Clippers play or watching the Ducks play. Obviously, somebody asked me today on my stream. They were like, "Clippers game or Star Citizen?" I'm like, "Are we in the playoffs or?" You know, because I have to really think about that. I might have to just put the Clippers on the fifth monitor or on the sixth monitor and just not really pay attention to them.
Well, fantastic. So anyone who gets Star Citizen, I'll get it. If it's on Steam, I'll play with you, my friend. That sounds great.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
You're more than welcome.
before we get into that deeper, I want to ask if anyone in the audience has a few questions. Ask me anything for Greydon. After that, I'd like to do a listening party where we put on a few of his songs. So is anyone who listened to the interview have a question or comment for Greydon?
I sure do. I was listening to the Omniverse song the other day, and I heard you throw out Ophiuchus. So, what you know about Ophiuchus? The fact you even use that word is awesome, because most people have never even heard of it, or Ophiuchus, however you pronounce it.
Yeah, that was the way I had learned to say it. Yeah, the constellation, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, so I was talking about in the song scaling from, and first of all, it's a great question. I appreciate that. It's probably my most known song at this point, even surpassing my more known atheist songs like Stockholm Syndrome and Myth and stuff like that. If you would have told me years ago that that would have been the song, that would have been my most popular song, I'd have been like, wait, what? No way. But Ophiuchus was something that I used because what I was studying for when I was writing that song, I had to basically study trying to transition from scale to scale. So going from the quantum foam into, you know, these fundamental forces in nature splitting off, and then trying to describe that as like quarks, and going from there into subatomic particles, and then going in there into normal classical matter, and scaling up. Of course, a constellation like Ophiuchus is going to come up. It's, you know, one of the ones that we observe, we talk about a lot, and, you know, in constellation forums and stuff like that. And it's got a cool name, right? So I figured I wanted to rhyme it. When I saw it, I was like, yeah, that looks like a word I'd want to rhyme. Now, the way you pronounced it, had I heard it pronounced like that, I probably would have never used it, because there would have been no way I felt like I would have been able to flip it in a rhyme. So I wonder if I've been saying it wrong this whole time.
Well, you've been saying it, what, Ophiuchus, and he's saying Ophiuchus? Or...
Yeah, I've been saying it Ophiuchus. He's saying Ophiuchus. So it could be, if he's saying it correctly, then this entire time I, you know, had been saying it wrong.
Well, either way, it's pretty based. It's the 13th sign, and anybody in this server knows OpenEye is the 13th sign as well. So OpenEye is Ophiuchus or Ophiuchus.
Okay.
So that's interesting. But Ralph or anyone else, do you have another question? Well, I just want to say one thing before I forget. We have something called the member content channel on the server. So any YouTube videos, Spotify's, Bandcamps, anything you have, posted in that member content channel. I
Okay.
personally, and as the server, 100% behind you. I think you're crazy talented. I love your music. You're awesome
Thank
to
you.
talk to.
Thank you.
If you ever want to do another podcast on any subject at any time, you're always welcome. Thank you, Techno, for hooking us up with this wonderful gentleman, and Sci-Fi as well. Anybody
Let's
from
do
your
one.
collective?
Let's do one on
Amazing.
aliens.
Absolutely. We could do it any day you want, my friend. Just send me a direct message. We'll set it up. That being
All right.
said, one last chance for questions, and then I think we should go to the listening party.
What's the
Does anybody-
best way to achieve an extropic system from your perspective?
You didn't say the extropic, as in extropianism.
Yes.
So extropianism, I can't remember who exactly founded extropianism, and if I pulled it up, you'll notice that some of the tenets of it is very similar to things like trans-intellectualism, and that was the basis in which I crafted trans-intellectualism. Right, it was basically a cross between transhumanism, secular humanism, and the intellectualism that I had discovered with the Kardashev scale and Nikolai Kardashev and all that type of stuff. So the best way, I mean, to be honest with you, I may not be the right person to answer that question, but I would say if I was to give my answer, I would say it would take a completely restructuring of the way that we understand reality and how we're taught nature, because I think there's a certain distance of how we're taught those things. And so when you talk about creating that sort of a system eventuality, I think it begins with, like, and I hate to use the term reprogramming because it sounds like it's almost forced or mandated. No, if you don't do it willingly, then it kind of defeats that whole purpose. But I don't know. I mean, what's the best way to achieve that? I don't know if we are able to do that now. We may have actually passed the point of no return, but you have to have some sort of a technological and biological hybrid essentially going on, to where the thought process of the biological entity is not constrained by the limits of its biology. And maybe you have this augmented intelligence that allows them to think of solutions that would be able to answer that question. But based on what we know now and our understanding of science and nature now, I'm not sure if we have that, if we have the ability to achieve that at our current stage.
So
And I'm the optimist here.
Great question, Techno. Great answer, my friend Greydon. I think Hawthorne had a question that he wanted to ask. Is that correct, Hawthorne?
Yeah, thanks, Greydon. Really enjoyed your presence here this evening. Did
Thank
you have
you.
a reaction on January the 6th when you saw what went down in Washington?
I did. I think, like everybody, I was pretty appalled by what I saw, but I also did not castigate. And this goes into a completely different topic. I don't know if we have time for this, but I value myself a political independent, and a true political independent, not in the sense where it's like I'm a Democrat who says that he's an independent, or I'm a Republican who says he's an independent. No, I'm truly an independent. I have voted for Republicans, Democrats, independents, written people in, Green Party, the People's Party. It doesn't matter who it is. I've voted essentially every political party and no political party, right? My favorite politician of all time is somebody named Jesse Ventura, if anybody's interested in that guy. So there is a desire, I think, to play for Team X. And so when what happened on January 6th took place, instantly everybody ran and put on their team jerseys and wanted to basically play for Team X. Well, I don't do that. I don't play for the Democrats. I'm not a Democrat. I've never been a quote unquote progressive or a liberal. I'm just me, right? You ask me a question about a particular issue and I'll give you an answer. Sometimes it may be left leaning or far left. Sometimes it may be right leaning, or in very rare cases, far right. I mean, I'm pretty far right on when it comes to free speech and gun rights, right? Regardless of how offensive the speech or content is, I'm for the most part an absolutist when it comes to that sort of stuff. Even with things where people are like, well, they're inciting violence. It's like, I don't see it that same way. That's just me personally. And I know there are a lot of people who are going to disagree with me on that. But on a lot of things, I lean very left on. when it comes to, social issues and who people want to date and love, and if they want to get married to somebody of the same sex, have at it. I personally don't think that marriage should be legal at all, but if you want to get married, fine, whatever. So it really comes from a place of wanting to maintain my political independence, through which I assess a lot of these incidents. And when that happened, yeah, I condemned anybody who took violent action, but I don't condemn the other people who were there just by association. There were people there, whether you believe their concerns or not, whether you think that they have bought some nonsense about the election being stolen or not, that's beside the point. Those people were there to exercise their free speech. And I don't think, castigating them in a general way with all the people who, maybe it was like 100 people or 200 people who stormed the Capitol. There was like, 75,000 people there or something. I think there was more than that. I think there was like 100,000 people at the Capitol. There might have been more than that. But anyway, I just feel like, do I condemn what the people did as far as taking violent action? Yeah, I condemn violence of all forms if it's not in self-defense. But I also understand that that wasn't everybody who was there. And I don't think everybody there endorses the actions of what the people did in when they try to take violent action. If you were taking violent action, I think you should be prosecuted and you should be thrown under the damn jail, right? That is essentially what you took, was a violent action against the very government that, professes to protect your freedoms and blah, blah. So, that's going to come with some consequences. But, I never looked at it as, oh, it's like the right's trying to take over, or Donald Trump's. No, I never saw it as that. I just saw it as a small group of fanatics who was playing checkers and not chess. And all the people who contributed to that really was a checkers move, because it allowed the other side to then justify a lot of things that we're going to look back on and say, we shouldn't let them do that.
Well, great answer, Greydon. And I'm going to give one last chance. Podcast. It's been a awesome podcast, awesome guest, awesome music. So on that note, Techno, can you queue up, I don't know, what do you think, Greydon? 1, 2, 3 songs?
Yeah, I mean, Omniverse, I'd love to show. Society versus Nature is a good song to show, and Summer's Ending is also another one that I think is pretty good. So either one of those songs is great. Omniverse is obviously first choice of mine.
So you can find, I think, those two, Omniverse and of Nature, in announcements, if that helps. But Techno, these songs, so please queue them up. Anyone, make sure you have GroovyBot turned on and turned up. I'm pretty sure it'll come through on a recording bot. Again, you can find this on YouTube, on BitChute, on Podbean, and on the Roundtable Discord server. It is indeed Greydon Square, head of the Greydon Square Collective. And we're going to listen to a couple of his tunes right now, so spark up a bowl. Let's do it.
Blaze another dozen.
Yeah.
So make sure you get that bot turned up.
Yeah. Started at the foam as a quantum burst. On the journey from the plane through the omniverse. The shortest distance you can travel at the speed of light. Watch me take the same path as the neutrinos flight. Shot forward, zooming past the top court, where the space, time, and energy roads do not fork. I've been slept on since the electron, Westbourne, home of the place that'll leave your chest warm. Photonic crystals are my playthings, rap at this scale, spoken in gamma ray wavelengths. Blaze beats, on my way to H3, unstable combustible isotopes at great heat. Fluid like a Mickey Mouse molecule, breaking down all atomic rules on the follow-through. I traverse the alpha helix, on the way to complex chemistry, you're bound to see it. Deoxyribonucleic secrets in the deep end, as I keep the beat and sow the seeds of reason. The only heathen that can bring you cell replication. Shoot questions dead through the barrel of investigation. Separation, 2 strands, introduce RNA into the sequence, then you'll get a new hand. Puffin' Chiba with amoeba, debating which came first, consciousness or the creature. With tapeworms, cannabis tea
poured from Russell's teapot to toast to every person to ever win an EGOT. Pack the stadium the size of a coliseum. Skyscrapers, high-risers, tetrahedrons. Give me a beat and an ounce of leaf, and I'll show you things from the crease of the mountain peaks. Stay artful as I chop countries to state parcels. Leave the planet completely, become a space marshal. On the red plains, exploring the Mars dunes. Scrutinize asteroid debris and small moons. Who you talking to? I spit the cold fission. Visit every world near, then leave the solar system. Only one of many. All the space in between here and there is cold, and much of it is empty. Still come across a nebula or two, a couple of parsecs, and we've only gone a few. The void we launch into, from Orion's arm. Starships, galaxy class, we flying on. Galactic following, barely known in a local group. Training all alone, near large voids of evoking truth. Take it in, let it sober you. As we go out to get a better seat of the overview. An ocean of space engulfing you. With so many superclusters, they're singular in multitude. Every single one, from Leo to Pavo Indus. I've traveled it all, from Columba to Ophiuchus. I break jaws with the Great Wall of galaxies and filaments that would face all. One existence of distances that you might fear. From end to end, that's over 1 billion light years. In a sea of universes, it's a bubble in. And this is from the human's perch at the Hubble length. At scales like this, I find it troubling. How can I describe one branch when there are other limbs? Fleeing singularities while they're doubling. Coming out the face of multiverse right in front of him. Nowhere to hide, the vast smothers him. A gram's number of gigaparsecs to the upper rim. Hyper realms absent temporal cause. Every unique cosmic set with different physical laws. Plus every species capable of computation probably has supercomputer run simulations. With a population trying to explain it. With its own Dr. Gates and its own language. Dirty windshields hinder our comprehension while tracking down great attractors, aiming for ascension. From here, the multiverses look like sheets of paper in a library of books near the speed of lasers. Xenostructures that are even greater, built from every fundamental thing you'd see in nature. At a hyper glance, you wouldn't even notice the beauty of the balance. Damn, they should have sent a poet. The Omni, the top of the hierarchy, where all modes are in play, even the probably. Cyclical birth, life, and death of a whole entire cosmos where your old life's a speck of probability swallowed by infinity, existing longer than all cosmological history. Swallowed by infinity, existing longer than all cosmological history.
With nature, you're right. And then perhaps our human affinity for this is a reflection of what nature does, because nature uses symmetry in enormous numbers of places for the shape of a flower, a snowflake, any place where we humans look out and we find something beautiful. If you analyze it long enough, you'll probably figure out that we're looking at a symmetric image. But then nature turns around and pulls a trick on us, because if the world were perfectly symmetrical, we could not exist. And so nature in the end breaks symmetries, and it turns out that it's by the breaking of those symmetries that the laws apparently of nature that allow human beings to exist occur in the way that they do.
Yeah. It's kind of cold. Yeah. 1, 2. Yeah. Look, I'm the creepy guy in the trench coat following you. The homeless guy on the side of the freeway bothering you. I tried to signal, but you didn't pay me no mind. Now I call like a bill collector till you pay me on time. I've got the skill to describe your morphogenetic field, and yet and still go back to the math for a better thrill. We took all of our collective forces and unified it. You read the Bible, and that isn't even pseudoscience. You think I'm afraid of Islam like I'm shook nervous? I'll torture Quran with my lyrics, fuck a book burning. These blacks accept the religion of the slave master, but they wouldn't accept it if you were a gay rapper? Why is it when we wanna move forward, we face backwards? Our community's sick, religion the main factor. You have such a problem with gays and transsexuals. What if I told you that we were trans intellectuals? You probably flip, deny that you're a member. Call for those who think like me to be dismembered. Something you picked up from a former era. Spreading religious love in the form of terror. Pipe down, pick up a book right now. Of an opposing view, you might find out everything ain't what you thought it was. There are no others, everyone's a part of us. There's just an illusion of something different. The very reason they keep telling you something's missing. But whatever it is, you won't get from one religion. I hate to break it to you, get your cold, summer's ending. Summer's ending. It's just an illusion of something different. The very reason they keep telling you something's missing. Whatever it is, you won't get from one decision. I hate to break it to you, get your cold, summer's ending. Summer's ending. There's only so many legal moves. When you've seen the rules, you wonder how they have so many people fooled. I never thought when I was young in class that I would be scribbling in chalk on the walls of the underpass. Some might ask, how'd it happen? How'd you get there? Most people thinking I'm just yapping when I sit there and just stare at traffic rapping just to get there. Half a second of attention span as they spin years. Rentable to the highest bidder in a bidding war. Disappear from 9 to 5, then act like I'm invisible. Pitiful, wanna be pimps, players, and centerfolds. In it for the cash and status, and yet they miserable. I'm not homeless, I'm just off the grid. Be happy if I was on it, I'd be offing kids. I think the problem is we ain't being honest. I'd rather live like shit than pay for shadow conflicts. We ain't broke, it's the system that is broken. This is a modern day plantation and you know it. Manufactured patriotism makes asking questions about secret initiatives just as dangerous as SEALs on the secretive mission. Secret prisons people still in. Even paranoid transients see the villains. Sure, I hear voices telling me inhale the weed and always peer forward, wandering this scorched earth. Just looking to score something to eat. Get out of the rain, a blanket, and somewhere to sleep. Wondering if the Sally in box is gonna pan out. All you see is another grown man with his hand out. Nothing to my name except for some books, while the cops watch everybody except for the crooks. And the people left on the hook be like ho-hum. Plus they get to pay for it too. This is so dumb. A balancing act with peace as the fulcrum. But what would I actually know? I'm just some smelly old bum. Dig through old crates feeding on breadcrumbs. Just another mother's broken son whose head's gone. Fumble in a basket, mumbling some racket under that bridge, where a normal man becomes a savage. One man's peace, another man's madness. You keep the illusion, I'll just settle for a jacket. There's just an illusion of something different. The very reason they keep telling you something's missing. But whatever it is, you won't get from one religion. I hate to break it to you, get your cold, summer's ending. Summer's ending. It's just an illusion of something different. The very reason they keep telling you something's missing. Whatever it is, you won't get from one decision. I hate to break it to you, get your cold, summer's ending. Summer's ending. Yeah. I'm gonna make a few observations. Just my own. We're on an island of society, in an ocean of nature, where violence lives with poverty. Hope is their neighbor. See, there's a disconnect. We think this planet owes us something. Actually believing to serve us is its only function. Our attitude towards it is too insane. Fools in pain, residing on a target in a shooting range. What happens when we lose these comfortable conveniences and fools can no longer live off the substance of the geniuses? Fuck your vaginas and your penises. You both apes, your frivolous differences are meaningless. You speak of danger and don't even know how safe you are. Acting like a mass extinction cares about what race you are. Society coddles and lies for what's best. Nature arrives wearing the disguise of your death. We hit the lotto in a universe uniquely hostile, while the attempted separation leaves the species hollow. The subtle conflicts of the ages are problems we inherited from ancients, unforeseen. And when the battle causes anguish, it's all the society versus nature underneath. members amongst it brutally, then call for peace. There doesn't have to be this friction. Should we obtain balance, we'll reach the mythic, vaunted peak. Grotesque areas where rest becomes where enough is perilous. Nature isn't supposed to be fair or just. You got that confused with society, the lies of piety, old sobriety, the notion you're supposed to hire me. A tree of life in a forest of death, upon a leaf that employs the duress. On a planetoid orbiting death, would you expect from the killing game? The lioness showed up at the same time that your feelings came. Simple and plain, survival of the fittest ingrained, to be retained in the primitive's brain. Your weakness will get weeded, even if you think it's better off to be conceited. It's undefeated, more confirms than the internet. It'll kill a vet like a sniper hits a simple silhouette. So imagine what it does to the clueless, the unprepared and scared, ones who are truly foolish. The subtle conflicts of the ages are problems we inherited from ancients, unforeseen. And when the battle causes anguish, it's often society versus nature underneath. We love the comforts of community, but still treat the members amongst it brutally, then call for peace. There doesn't have to be this friction. Should we obtain balance, we'll reach the mythic, vaunted peak.
It's like it was. Allows you to sort of be transported back in time. That's the sort of thing I like my grandkids to be able to do. To be able to go to the same place I went. Be able to see virtually what I saw.
Nature in the interim, society in the interval. Maximum escapism, sobriety is the minimal. Intoxicated from the hubris, overcomplicate our simple world as we misuse it. Society's the nuisance, trying to sell a game of rules and pretend, where you can only own what you can defend. Essence is large, the fact is you are small. Nature plays the referee, you argue in the calls. Intelligence lives while ignorance is targeted, in a realm where you only have your will and wits to bargain with. Part of this is the cognitive dissonance we experience knowing we're born with death sentences. We're less interested in reconnecting, disrespected, until it's about to kill us to teach a lesson. So lost in age, we dismiss it and forget that our place within is uniquely intrinsic. The subtle conflicts of the ages are problems we inherited from ancients, unforeseen. And when the battle causes anguish, it's often society versus nature underneath. We love the comforts of community, but still treat the members amongst it brutally, then call for peace. There doesn't have to be this friction. Should we obtain balance, we'll reach the mythic, vaunted peak.
About my music.
Well, anybody with a taste for that is going to appreciate it, and I hope we got that out to a few more people. So check out Greydon Square on YouTube. You can find his stuff in member content and announcements channel on the Roundtable Discord server on YouTube on BitChute. Hopefully you listen to this and you're a fan. I'm a fan. Anything you got coming out, let us know. We'll pump it up as much as we can. Thank you, Greydon, for your time. Thank you for joining the server. Thank you, Techno, for DJing it and for bringing him here. And Sci-Fi yesterday and all that. So check out the Greydon Square Collective. Thank you, Greydon. And anytime, our platform is your platform, my bro.
Thank you. Much appreciated. I will see you guys later.
All right. God bless. Thanks, everybody,
Peace,
for joining.
peace.
Check us out on the Roundtable Discord server. Same time every day, 8 p.m. CT. If you want to hang around with us, just jump up to the Roundtable 1 channel, or why don't we make it the pub, actually, since we're after hours. If you want to hang out, join us in the pub. Thank you so much to our guests and everybody. See you next time.